Hi, this is Alex Gumpel for Twit and Before You Buy, and today I will be reviewing the the Nokia Lumia 920 and Windows Phone 8X by HTC. Now, these are both brand new phones that just came out last month, and these are the new Windows phones running Windows Phone 8. These two happen to be the top of the line Windows phones that just came out. So because of that, they have very similar specs. They both have 1.5 gigahertz dual-core processors. The 920 has a 4.5-inch Pure Motion HD Plus clear black display. Whatever that means. It sounds impressive, but it's just marketing speech. While the 8X has a 4.3-inch screen. They're both IPS displays. They both look fantastic. Audio-wise, they each have their own little special thing. The Lumia has a Dolby headphone built in, so when you're listening with headphones, you get this little extra boost, while the 8X has Beats audio, which basically does the same thing. Let's see, the 920 has 32 gigabytes of storage, while the 8X has 16 gigabytes, although apparently you can also get it at 8 gigabytes, and I don't know why you would ever want that, but the option is there. The 920 has a 2000 milliamp hour battery. The 8X has a 1800 milliamp hour battery. Now, both of these phones support NFC, which is a new feature in Windows Phone 8. So you can send pictures, you can send contacts, you can send URLs to each other, and with the right app, you can also just send raw data, text or whatever else, to any other device, including Android phones and PCs, anything that has NFC. And you can also receive it as well if you have the right app to recognize it. Now, the 920 has wireless charging built in. The 8X does not, except for the one on Verizon. So if you happen to be on Verizon and you get your 8X, you will have wireless charging ready. So if you have a pad, you can drop it on there and be charged. And of course, same with the 920. Now, the 920 is made out of a polycarbonate plastic, which I think is just a fancy term for plastic. The cyan and the black phones have a matte finish, while the white, yellow, and I think the red phones have a glossy finish. And from my brief encounter with the glossy one, that one just feels like smooth, glossy plastic, which I don't particularly care for. But the matte ones have this really nice feel that it's not quite rough, like there's no texture, but it's not quite smooth either, and you can hear your finger go across it. So there's texture there, but it's not enough to feel, and it creates this. I can't describe it. It feels really nice. In the corners, you think would be sharp, but they're actually beveled just a little bit. So running your finger along it just feels really nice. Holding in your hand feels nice. It's a solid phone. It's big, and it's heavy. Now, a lot of reviewers have talked about the weight, and it's not so much the weight that's the problem. 6.5 ounces, which is heavy for a phone, but like if you put this in your pocket, your pants aren't going to fall off because of the weight. And it's not like you're struggling to hold it and pick it up. It's the weight that's combined with the size and the shape of the phone, and also the material is a little bit slippery too. So the combination of all those things just kind of makes it unwieldy to hold with one hand, at least when you're trying to pick it up and fumble with it and type and get your pinky under there for support. You can easily drop it if you're not careful. So that's kind of an issue, but that's what you get for having a big phone. Now, the battery on this phone is pretty nice. I managed to get it to last about 6 days on one charge. Granted, it was mostly on standby, and I maybe went in about once a day to do something quick and nothing very power intensive, but it did last 6 days nonetheless, which is kind of nice. When someone like Burke breaks the thermostat and so it gets really cold, and so you put gloves on and you don't want to take your gloves off because it's so cold, but you still got to do something with your phone? Well, with the 920, that's not a problem. Nokia has designed a super sensitive capacitive touchscreen for the Lumia. So even if you're wearing thick leather gloves, you can still play with your phone with ease and warmth. Or even if you're not wearing gloves and for some reason you have a screwdriver and want to just touch your phone and play with it with a screwdriver, you can do that too. Pretty much anything metal works. Keys, more screwdrivers, whatever. Now, of course, one of the big features of the 920 is the camera, specifically the low-light photography you can do with the camera. Now, there are some weird things I've noticed, one of which is that you tend to have to take a picture twice for it to come out nicely in the darkness, especially if it's something that's not close up that I can focus on before taking the picture. So if you're taking a picture of a grand vista at night, the first one will probably be blurry, and maybe the colors will be wrong and just out of focus and dark or something. Then when you take it again shortly after, it will be much better. Now also, your subjects are going to have to stand still for a bit if you want a clear picture. If you're trying to take a candid group shot of a bunch of people, you're probably not going to find one image that's going to be really good. because someone's going to be moving and someone isn't, so you might have one good person and then the others are blurry, and you're going to have to do some Photoshop magic to clear that, unless you tell everyone to hold still for a second. Now, as good as the night pictures are, in daylight it's not so good. If you zoom in on this picture here, you can see that it kind of has almost a watercolor effect. I'm not sure why that is. Supposedly Nokia is working on a fix for that. That will come out as a software update soon. Now, another benefit of the optical stabilization is the video. They have special software magic that compensates for all the motion that happens even with the springs, but it does some weird stuff, and so video that you take will be very smooth. If you're just holding it with one hand, you're not going to get much wobble or any sort of shakiness. As you can see here, things are very, very smooth panning around. And also, as you notice, it's very dark. The low light stuff only works for stills and not for video. Now, something you get with the Lumia phones is you have Nokia's own apps instead of some of the stock apps. In this case, we have Nokia Maps, Nokia Drive, Nokia City Lens, Nokia Music, and some Lens apps provided by them. The Nokia Drive is marked as beta, and I don't know if that means that they just didn't have time to finish it for Windows Phone 8, or if they're just going to continuously work on it like Google. Now, functionally, this app is good. It gives you the 3/4 view, follows you as you're going, gives you turn-by-turn directions, and all that other good stuff that you want in a navigation app. However, I have to ding it for the UI. They tried to make it look Metro, but it's not really Metro. I'm sorry, not Metro. It's that term that we can't use. So like if you go into a menu here, you know, you got icons and you got lines and you got scroll buttons. Even though you can still scroll with your thumb, you still got buttons there. That seems to be just left over from the old days. And if you go back to the main thing, you know, you got zoom buttons on the top, even though pinch to zoom still works. So it seems like Nokia is just keeping it the way it was, and they're not adapting it to the Windows Phone way of doing things, which I don't think is a good idea for either Microsoft or Nokia when they're trying to create this unified environment. Now, the Lumia also comes with some Nokia-made lenses, which are apps that you can access through the camera, which basically just kind of extend the camera functionality for specific uses. One of which is panorama, which is self-explanatory. Some notes though is it only works in landscape, and it's only horizontal and not a full 360. I think you get five pictures that it stitches together. Now, the Windows Phone 8X by HTC. This phone is also made out of plastic, but it's coated in this soft rubbery coating of some sort. It's about as thick in the center as the 920, but it's got these tapered edges, and so with that and the coating, it's also a little bit thinner. It just feels really nice in your hand. It's probably one of the nicest phones I've ever felt in my hand, and I just can't get over that. It just feels really nice to hold. It's also a little bit lighter. It's 4.6 ounces, and it's a delight. The power button on the top right is a little too flush with the body. And it's kind of hard to feel for it, and you have to sometimes look and make sure that you're pressing in the right spot. Now, there's one thing I really have to complain about, and that is that Microsoft has decided to split out the Maps app in kind of two separate functions. There's the Maps app, which can give you your maps, obviously, and now you can actually download them, which is nice, and you can get your directions, but the directions don't update in real time. It doesn't follow you as you're driving, or if you go somewhere else, it doesn't update and try to reconfigure from where you are now. To do that, you have to actually go back and re-enter the destination and have it regenerate the list from scratch. The turn-by-turn navigations is now split off to specific navigation apps. On the Lumia, that's Nokia Drive. On this phone, I have VZ Navigator because this is a Verizon phone, and Verizon has decided to make their own navigation app. Unfortunately, VZ Navigator is awful, and you have to pay for it on a monthly subscription. Why on earth would anyone want to pay a monthly subscription for an awful navigation app when there are so many good free services on the internet these days? Of course, you can uninstall this app like you can any other app in Windows Phone. However, there are no replacements available at this time. I'm hoping that there'll be some nice developer that will make a really great navigation app that will plug into the Maps app. But as of now, there are no navigation apps available that have that functionality. And speaking of Verizon and great things they do, they've disabled group messaging on this phone. So if I send an SMS message to multiple recipients, they'd each get it all individually, instead of doing this MMS magic and creating this little group chat room thing, which worked with the iPhone, and I don't think it worked with Android, but might work on the current one, but not the old one. But it did work on Windows Phone 7, and it works also on these phones on other networks, just not on Verizon, because Verizon wants to be special, and Verizon is very special. Now, the camera on this phone is also really nice, but one thing this has that the 920 does not is a dedicated image processing chip, and this allows you to capture photos quicker than you can on that phone. Now, the camera itself on this phone is really nice as well. With low light though, the brightness is actually a little more closer to reality than it would be on the 920, which seems to bump things up, and also it's a little more cooler and more blue on that. This one is a little warmer and grainier, Sometimes a little too warm and grainy, but there is an autofix button which seems to compensate for that. But it's kind of hit or miss. Sometimes it looks good, sometimes it doesn't, and you want to just stick with the originals. Now the front-facing camera on this phone is really nice and actually better than the 920s. It has a really wide field of view. Here's a picture taken from the steering wheel of my car. There's a picture of me and Shannon. There's Tony taking a picture of himself at the Christmas party the other day. And there's a bunch of us. Here's 4 of us trying to fit ourselves all into one frame. And the color is also really nice. Here's Brian and I taking a picture of the front-facing camera on the 8X compared to the front-facing camera on the 920. And the camera's resolution is 1920 by 1080 and does record full 1080p video. Now let's get to the pros and cons. We'll start with the 920. The obvious pro is the camera and the amazing low-light pictures you can take with it. Also, the battery life being very nice is another pro. However, the cons are that it's just unwieldy. As nice as the body looks and is kind of to feel, when you're holding in one hand and trying to do phone stuff and just kind of fumble around, it is just too unwieldy. I hate to say it. Also, the whole thing with the Nokia trying to do their own thing with the apps and not play well with the ecosystem, doing their own thing, creating this kind of fragmentation, that I would say is another con with the Nokia phones. All right, so now the 8X, pros are, it just feels really light and thin and just feels wonderful in your hand and you just want to hold it. Also, the camera is, even though it's not as good with low light as the 920s, it's still a great camera. Cons are, with 16 gigs, it's got pretty limited storage with no micro SD expansion. I don't know why, but that's what it is. And also, there's no real navigation app, at least on Verizon's version. Now, the pricing of these phones is a little interesting. The 920, at least in the US, goes for $99 on contract or $449 retail. While the 8X goes for either $99 to $199 on contract or $449 to $549 on retail. I guess it depends if it's the 16 gig or the 8 gig version, both of which are smaller than the 920's 32 gigs. So the 8X is actually typically more expensive than the 920, which is a little surprising, but that's what it is. So buy, try, or don't buy. I would say both of these phones are a buy. They're both flagship Windows phones, and they both have near identical specs. It's just in the specialties where one is better than the other, and it just really depends on what you're looking for. If you want to take amazing low-light photos, or you like Nokia's apps, or if you just need a good navigation app, go with the 920. If those things are not really quite worth the heft that you get with the 920, and you just want an overall excellent phone that just looks beautiful and feels great in your hand, and it's just an excellent thing, go with the 8X. But either one, you can't go wrong. They're both very good. Just go to a store, just see if you can play with both of them and just compare them and see which one you like better, because they're both very good. So anyway, I'm Alex Gumpel for Twit, and this is my review of the Nokia Lumia 920 and Windows Phone 8X by HTC. Thanks.